She abandoned my son because of his financial difficulties, but then showed up at his funeral demanding the $30 million he had left me. My daughter-in-law, who had been divorced for 7 years, came for her inheritance and suddenly turned pale when she saw who was standing next to me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I stood near Tyler's casket with my hands folded, accepting condolences from people whose faces blurred together. Professional distance. That's what 37 years in the funeral business teaches you. Keep the mask smooth, nod at the right moments. My son lay 3 feet away in polished mahogany, and I greeted mourners like they were strangers burying strangers. The chapel held maybe 20 people, business associates from the construction supply company Tyler had worked for, a few neighbors, his former high school teacher, Mrs. Abernathy dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief that looked older than my grief. Not enough mourners for a 35-year-old man. That realization settled in my chest like concrete. The officiant, a woman I'd hired dozens of times for services like this, spoke about Tyler's dedication to family business, his warm smile, his potential. Standard funeral script. I'd written versions of it myself for clients. The words floated past me while my mind drifted backward, 7 years into the past, to the day everything fractured. I saw Maud in our old living room, suitcases packed, Tyler on his knees, literally on his knees, begging. "Maud, please, the business will recover. We just need time." She'd looked at him with eyes colder than January rain. "I'm not living with a failure, Tyler. I deserve better than this." The memory had teeth. I watched her walk out that day, heels clicking against hardwood, and Tyler crumpled like paper. The business did recover, ironic that. But Tyler never did. The liquor started slow. Bourbon on weekends became bourbon on weeknights, became bourbon for breakfast. Hospital visits for pancreatitis, liver inflammation, blood pressure that could kill a horse. I buried clients younger than me while watching my son dig his own grave with a bottle. The heart attack took him on a Tuesday morning, 35 years old, alone in his apartment with an empty glass on the nightstand. The chapel door opened mid-eulogy. The creak cut through the officiant's words like a blade through silk. Every head turned. A woman stepped inside, silhouetted against the Houston afternoon light. Black dress, expensive fabric, designer handbag. I recognized her walk before I saw her face. That calculated confidence. The way she moved through space like she owned it. Maud. Whispers erupted like small fires. "Is that his ex-wife?" someone hissed. Another voice. 7 years she's been gone, not a single call. Now she shows up. Mrs. Abernathy gasped loud enough that people 3 rows back heard it. The officiant faltered mid-sentence. Tyler Mitchell was a devoted son and a man who faced his challenges with... I gripped the edge of the pew in front of me. My knuckles went white against the dark wood. Professional distance evaporated. Something colder, sharper, replaced it. Maud scanned the room like she was appraising inventory. Her gaze lingered on the floral arrangements, expensive ones, the kind that signal respect and money. She noted the crowd size, the quality of people's clothing, the polished floors of my funeral home. Calculating, always calculating. She took a seat in the back row, smoothing her dress with manicured fingers. Every movement deliberate, performative. That practiced expression of sorrow she wore. I'd seen it on 100 faces at 100 funerals. I knew fake grief when I saw it. My jaw tightened. The fog of mourning that had wrapped around me for 3 days suddenly lifted. Clarity arrived cold and precise. I began cataloging details, the Hermes bag on her lap, the fresh manicure, the subtle highlights in her hair, salon work, expensive salon work. She came. After everything she'd done to Tyler, after abandoning him when the business struggled, after refusing his calls, after 7 years of absolute silence. She came. Why? The question coiled in my mind like a snake. I watched her dab at eyes that remained perfectly dry. She caught me staring and offered a trembling smile, the kind meant to convey shared pain. I didn't smile back. The officiant pushed through to the end of her script, stumbling over words that suddenly felt meaningless. People shifted in their seats, uncomfortable, sensing the wrongness that had entered the room with Maud's arrival. Tyler deserved better than this. Better than dying alone. Better than a sparse funeral. Better than his destroyer showing up dressed in black and performing grief like dinner theater. I looked at the casket, then back at Maud. Something shifted inside me, grief sliding sideways into focus. Cold focus. The kind of clarity I'd built a business on. The kind that calculates odds and plans, moves, and never, ever miscalculates twice. Whatever brought her here, whatever she wanted, I'd find out. And I'd be ready. The service ended with a recorded hymn playing through speakers I'd installed myself 5 years ago. Guests stood, stretching legs, gathering coats and purses. The line formed naturally, people waiting to offer their final condolences before escaping into the Houston heat. I stood near the chapel exit and shook hands. He was a good man, Mr. Mitchell. Such a tragedy, so young. You have my deepest sympathies. Hollow phrases, words I'd heard whispered 1,000 times in this building, words I'd said myself to grieving families. Now they washed over me, meaningless as rain. I nodded, thanked them, gripped hands with mechanical precision. The funeral director, performing his final duty for his own son. Maud lingered at the back. She didn't join the line immediately. Smart, strategic. She waited while others filed past, thinning the crowd, creating the moment she wanted. I watched her preparation out of my peripheral vision. The way she checked her reflection in her compact mirror, adjusted her expression, timed her approach. When only 3 people remained between us, she moved forward. Tissues appeared in her hand like a magician's prop. Her eyes glistened. Impressive, really, summoning tears without actual emotion. Sylvester. Her voice broke perfectly, trembling at the right syllable. I'm so sorry. Tyler was everything to me once. The funeral program in my hand crumpled. Just slightly. Just enough that I felt the paper buckle between my fingers. Thank you for coming, Maud. My voice came out flat, professional, the tone I used with difficult clients. It was unexpected. She dabbed at her eyes, buying time, recalibrating. The other mourners had drifted away now, giving us space they assumed we needed for private grief. She stepped closer, dropping her voice to something more urgent. I need to speak with you, privately. The tears vanished like magic. Her jaw tightened. About Tyler's affairs. I was married to him for 8 years. Legally, I may have... This isn't the time or place. I cut her off, the words sharp as scissors through thread. If you have legal matters to discuss, call my office next week. We'll arrange something appropriate. I turned to leave. Her hand caught my arm, light pressure, just enough to stop me. Warning bells rang in my head. She wouldn't touch me unless she was desperate or confident. Maybe both. Next week, I repeated, pulling my arm back gently but firmly. My secretary will schedule you. I walked away before she could respond. Didn't look back. Didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing whatever expression she'd prepared next. The last few guests trickled out over the next 20 minutes. I made my rounds through the funeral home, turning off lights in the viewing rooms, checking that the front entrance was locked, adjusting the thermostat. Routine actions my hands knew by memory, but my mind was elsewhere, racing through implications and possibilities. Rights. She'd said rights, legal wife, 8 years of marriage that ended 7 years ago with her walking out. Texas community property laws, estate claims, spousal inheritance. The words tumbled through my head like dice. I made my way to my office, the small room at the back of the funeral home, where I'd planned hundreds of services, negotiated with suppliers, hired staff, built an empire from scratch after leaving the Army at 25, my sanctuary. The place where I made decisions that mattered. The leather chair creaked when I sat down. Late afternoon light slanted through the window, painting everything gold and amber. Houston sprawled beyond the glass, indifferent to funerals and grief and ex-wives who appeared like vultures. I opened the bottom desk drawer and pulled out my leather-bound notebook. Business contacts accumulated over nearly 4 decades. Contractors, suppliers, city officials, lawyers, especially lawyers. I flipped to a specific page. Ora Clark. We'd worked together for 12 years. Estate planning, business incorporation, property disputes, sharp mind, sharper instincts. If anyone could tell me what Maud might be planning, it was Ora. I picked up the desk phone, dialed the number I'd memorized years ago. 3 rings before her voice came through, professional but warm. Aura Clark. Aura, it's Sylvester Mitchell. My voice had changed. No longer the funeral director's careful neutrality. This was sharper, focused. I need you at my office, tonight if possible. Something's come up, something I should have anticipated. Silence on the line, then, I'll be there in an hour. I hung up and leaned back in the chair, studying the ceiling tiles I'd stared at 1,000,000 times. Tyler's face kept appearing in my mind. Not the Tyler in the casket, but the younger version, the one who'd believed in love and partnership and forever. The one Maud had destroyed piece by piece. She wanted something. Money, inheritance, a piece of what Tyler and I had built. She'd done her research, chosen her moment, rehearsed her performance. But so had I. For 37 years, I'd guided families through their worst days. I knew grief, knew manipulation, knew the difference between genuine sorrow and practice theater. Whatever game Maud thought she was playing, she'd picked the wrong opponent. The phone sat silent on my desk. The office filled with shadows as the sun dropped lower. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the gathering dark and waited for Aura, cataloging everything I knew, everything I needed to know, and everything I was prepared to do. Tyler deserved justice, and I was done being a passive observer in my own son's tragedy. The morning came too quickly. I'd spent the night reviewing old business records, pulling files from storage that I hadn't touched in years. Tax returns from 2017 and 2018, loan documents showing how close we'd come to bankruptcy, ledgers tracking our desperate scramble to stay afloat. Every number told the same story. The business had been dying when Maud walked out. I arrived at my office before dawn, before the staff who'd come in at 9 to prepare for today's services. Privacy mattered for this conversation. I needed Aura to understand everything, not just the legal angles, but the human cost, Tyler's cost. Aura arrived at 8:30 sharp, carrying her leather briefcase like a shield. We'd worked together for 12 years, estate planning, business incorporation, property disputes, the occasional contentious will. She'd seen families tear each other apart over money enough times to know what was coming. Aura, yesterday at the funeral, my former daughter-in-law made it clear she wants money. I kept my voice businesslike, the same tone I use discussing casket options with clients. Walk me through what she can actually claim versus what she'll try to claim. She set her briefcase on my desk, clicked it open, pulled out a thick folder, the 2018 divorce settlement. I'd filed it away 7 years ago and tried to forget it existed. Legally, nothing. She flipped through pages marked with yellow tabs. The 2018 settlement was clean. Maud signed a comprehensive agreement, received $23,000, your only liquid assets at the time, and waived future claims. But if she brings in the right attorney, they'll argue community property rights. They'll claim the business grew because of work Tyler did during the marriage. It's weak, but it could take 3, maybe 4 years to resolve. 4 years. I spread Tyler's financial documents across the desk. Business incorporation papers, loan documents from the crisis years, his personal tax returns, the evidence of what we'd built and what we'd almost lost. I'm not waiting years. The words came out harder than I intended. What else? What angles will she use? Aura opened her laptop, pulled up Texas family law statutes. Her fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, cross-referencing, highlighting potential vulnerabilities. Professional, efficient, slightly concerned. Emotional distress claims, arguments about Tyler's mental state when he signed documents after the divorce, allegations that you influenced him against her, maybe even claims he promised her financial support before he died. She looked up from the screen. None of it will hold up in court, but proving that costs time and money, which is exactly what she's counting on. I stood, walked to the window. Down in the parking lot, my staff was preparing for a morning burial service, loading flowers into the hearse, checking that the canopy was properly secured, performing the small rituals that gave families comfort. I'd built this business from nothing after leaving the Army at 25, 40 years of 7-day weeks, midnight phone calls, other people's grief. Tyler was supposed to inherit it. Instead, I buried him 3 days ago. I turned back to Aura. Something cold had settled in my chest during the night. Not anger exactly, but calculation. The same focused clarity I brought to running a business. Then we don't wait for her to attack. Tell me, What would stop her? What would make a lawsuit not worth filing? Aura's expression shifted. She'd seen grief transform people before. I knew that because I'd seen it too. Parents becoming obsessive, spouses making reckless decisions, children turning vicious over estate jewelry. But this wasn't grief-driven chaos. This was controlled fury becoming cold strategy. Evidence that she has no case, public documentation of the business's failures during the marriage, proof that all growth happened after the divorce. She paused, studying me. Or evidence that she's not who she claims to be. Anything that damages her credibility makes the lawsuit too risky. I smiled, not warm, not humorous, calculated. I've spent my career helping families find closure. I know how to bring things to an end. Aura closed her laptop slowly. Sylvester, what are you planning? What you advised, building a defense. I returned to my desk, pulled out a yellow legal pad. I need 2 lists from you. First, everything Maud can legally claim. Second, everything she'll likely try to claim. I want to know every possible attack before it comes. She nodded, started writing. For the next hour, we dissected the situation like pathologists examining a body. Texas community property law, statute of limitations, burden of proof, financial disclosure requirements, every weapon Maud might wield, every shield we could raise. When Aura finally packed her briefcase, the morning sun had burned through the early fog. The funeral home hummed with activity now, staff moving between viewing rooms, a family arriving for a service, phones ringing with the endless business of death. I'll have those lists by tomorrow, Aura said at the door. And Sylvester, be careful. People get desperate when they think money's slipping away. Desperate people do unpredictable things. I nodded. But I wasn't worried about Maud's desperation. I was counting on it. After she left, I sat alone in my office, reviewing the notes we'd made. Everything Aura said made sense legally, strategically. But law was only one battlefield. I'd learned something during 40 years of watching families fall apart. Information was power. Knowing what someone wanted, what they feared, what secrets they kept, that determined who controlled the conversation. Maud wanted money. That much was clear. But why now? Why show up after 7 years of silence? What had changed in her life that made Tyler's death an opportunity instead of just a tragedy? I picked up my phone, scrolled through my contacts. I knew people, business owners, contractors, city officials, information brokers who could find anything for the right price. In the funeral business, connections mattered. You never knew when you'd need a favor. I found the number I wanted, made the call, started asking questions. 3 days passed, I conducted 2 funerals, met with 4 families, maintained the facade of normalcy. But I was waiting. Aura's prediction about Maud hiring an attorney wasn't speculation. It was certainty. The only question was when the attack would come. The call came Thursday morning, my secretary's voice on the intercom. Mr. Mitchell, there's a Maud Perez on line 2. She says it's urgent. I let the phone ring twice more before answering. Small things mattered. Control started with timing. This is Sylvester Mitchell. Her voice had that same practiced quality from the funeral, trying for warmth, landing on calculation. Sylvester, thank you for taking my call. I know things were tense the other day. I wanted to apologize for the timing. It wasn't appropriate. What can I do for you, Maud? Silence. Then, I'd like to meet with you, tomorrow, if possible. 2 o'clock. There are financial matters we need to discuss, Tyler's affairs. I've consulted with an attorney who explained my position, and I think you'll want to hear what he has to say. There it was, not, I have questions, not, I need your help understanding. She'd already hired someone, already decided this was about taking, not asking. Tomorrow at 2, my office. I hung up before she could respond. The next afternoon, they arrived exactly on time. Maud wore a navy dress, expensive but subdued, professional armor. The man with her was younger, maybe 40, with a briefcase that probably cost more than most of my caskets. Sylvester Mitchell, I'm Travis Jordan. He extended his hand with practiced confidence. Attorney's smile, the kind that came from winning settlements and making partners nervous. Thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I shook his hand, gestured to the chairs across from my desk. Didn't offer coffee or water. This wasn't a social call. Travis settled into his seat, opened his briefcase, pulled out documents. The motion was deliberate, spreading papers across my desk like he was establishing territory. Intimidation through paperwork. I'd seen it before. "Mr. Mitchell, I'll be direct." He arranged the documents in neat stacks. "Ms. Perez was married to your son Tyler for 8 years. Under Texas community property law, she has legitimate claims to assets acquired during that marriage. While a divorce settlement was signed in 2018, my review suggests significant irregularities that warrant reconsideration." Maud sat quietly beside him, hands folded in her lap. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Good. She knew this was wrong, but wanted the money anyway. Cowardice dressed up as legal strategy. "The business was failing in 2018, I said, measured, giving nothing away. "We were deep in debt. The settlement reflected actual asset values." Travis smiled, the kind of smile that said he'd heard every excuse before. "Perhaps. But the business is worth approximately $2.8 million now, according to public business records. That growth occurred because of foundations laid during the marriage. Ms. Perez is entitled to equitable compensation." He pulled another document from his stack, slid it across the desk. "We're prepared to settle this quietly and quickly. Ms. Perez is requesting $850,000 as fair compensation for her community property share. In exchange, she'll sign a comprehensive release waiving all future claims." The number hung in the air between us. $850,000, more than a third of my business's value, for a woman who abandoned her husband when he needed her most. "I need to consult with my attorney and review the financial records from that period." I kept my voice level. Funeral director's patience. 1 week. Travis leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was sharing a confidence. "Mr. Mitchell, I understand this is difficult, but let me be frank. If we don't reach a settlement framework soon, I'll be forced to file a formal claim. Once that happens, it becomes public record. Your clients will see their funeral director embroiled in a contentious lawsuit. That kind of publicity can damage a business built on trust and discretion." There it was. The real weapon, not the law, the threat. Reputation damage, public scandal. He thought I'd pay to make this disappear quietly. Maud shifted in her chair, still wouldn't look at me. 1 week, I repeated. "Same time next week, we meet again." Travis studied me, recalculating. He'd expected fear or anger, something to exploit. Instead, I gave him nothing. Professional mask intact, the same composure I'd shown grieving families for 40 years. 1 week, Mr. Mitchell. We meet again, same time next week. If we don't have a settlement framework by then, I file a formal claim. And once I file, this becomes public record. They left. I listened to their footsteps recede down the hallway, heard the front door close, waited until their car pulled out of the parking lot before picking up my phone. First call, "Aura, he's using community property and threatening reputation damage. Start preparing a complete financial reconstruction of 2010 through 2018. Every loan, every debt, every loss. I want documentation that proves the business was worthless during the marriage." Second call, a number I'd looked up 3 nights ago, after my meeting with Aura, a service I'd never used before but knew existed. People who found information when information needed finding. "I need background information on 2 people. How fast can you work?" The week crawled by like a funeral procession. I conducted services, met with grieving families, signed paperwork, maintained the routine that had defined my life for 40 years. But underneath the professional mask, I was waiting. Jordan Reynolds called me twice with updates, brief, efficient conversations where he confirmed what I'd suspected. Maud had secrets, expensive secrets. On the 7th day, I drove downtown to Aura's law firm. The building was all glass and steel, 14 floors of Houston's finest legal minds billing by the quarter hour. I parked in the underground garage, took the elevator up, and arrived at the conference room 10 minutes late, deliberately. Let them settle in. Let Travis think he controlled the schedule. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Maud and Travis sat on one side of the long, polished table, documents and legal pads spread before them. They'd prepared for war. Travis looked up when I entered, confident smile in place, ready to renegotiate his extortion attempt. Then I stepped aside. Aura entered first, carrying her briefcase. Then Jordan Reynolds. Maud's face went white. not pale, white, like someone had drained every drop of blood in 3 seconds. Her hands, resting on the conference table, started trembling. She knew. Maybe not exactly what Jordan had found, but she knew what his presence meant. The past had arrived with a folder and a methodical expression. "Shall we begin?" Aura took the seat directly across from Travis. I sat at the head of the table. Jordan positioned himself beside Aura, setting his folder down with the careful precision of someone who'd done this many times before. Travis recovered quickly, professional armor back in place. "Mr. Mitchell, I appreciate your promptness." A subtle dig at my tardiness. "I trust you've had time to review our proposal. Ms. Perez is prepared to be reasonable, but we do need to reach a resolution today." "We will." I folded my hands on the table, said nothing else. Silence stretched. Travis glanced at Maud, then at Jordan, the stranger at the table, the unknown factor. Aura opened her briefcase, pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Before we discuss any proposal, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jordan Reynolds. Mr. Reynolds has been conducting an investigation on behalf of Tyler Mitchell's estate. Mr. Reynolds, please share your findings." Jordan opened his folder. No preamble, no explanation. He simply began laying photographs across the conference table, each one placed with deliberate care, creating a timeline across the polished wood. The first photo, Maud at an ATM. Date stamp visible in the corner, March 2018. Time, 11:47 p.m., withdrawing cash. Second photo, Maud at a restaurant I recognized, expensive steakhouse downtown. Date stamp, April 2018. She sat across from a man who definitely wasn't Tyler, her hand on his across the table. Third photo, Maud loading shopping bags into a silver BMW. Date stamp, May 2018. Tyler had driven a 10-year-old Honda. More photos followed, each one dated, time stamped, location tagged, methodical documentation of a secret life. Travis picked up one photograph, studied it, set it down carefully. His pen tapped against his legal pad, fast, nervous rhythm. He picked up another photo. The tapping accelerated. Maud's hands gripped the edge of the conference table, knuckles white against dark wood. She looked at Travis, desperate for guidance, but he was focused on the evidence, already calculating how devastating this was. Jordan Reynolds spoke for the first time, his voice calm and professional. "Over the past week, I've reconstructed Ms. Perez's financial activities during her marriage to Tyler Mitchell, specifically the period from January 2017 through June 2018. He produced another document, bank statements, highlighted in yellow, withdrawals, $2,000 here, $1,500 there, $3,000, $20,500, dozens of them, a pattern emerging like constellations. These withdrawals total approximately $45,000 over 18 months, all from joint accounts, all converted to cash, none disclosed to her husband." Travis tried to dismiss it, but his voice lacked conviction. "I don't see how old photographs are relevant to current estate claims. This is ancient history." Aura's response came swift and surgical. "These photographs document systematic fraud. Ms. Perez withdrew approximately $45,000 from joint accounts in the 6 months before filing for divorce. She concealed these withdrawals from her husband. That's not ancient history, Mr. Jordan. That's fraud on the community under Texas law." She let that sink in. Fraud. Criminal implications hanging in the air like smoke. Jordan continued his methodical presentation. "I also have sworn statements from 3 witnesses, a hotel concierge, 2 restaurant servers, confirming Ms. Perez's presence with multiple male companions during her marriage. Receipts show she paid for these encounters with funds from the joint account." Each sentence landed like a hammer, not loud, just precise and devastating. Maud finally tried to speak, her voice shaking so badly the words barely formed. "That's not... we were already..." I spoke for the first time since entering the room, cold, final. "Already planning to leave him, while spending his money on your affairs, while he works 70-hour weeks trying to save our business?" She flinched like I'd struck her. Couldn't meet my eyes. Couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Travis set down his pen. The tapping stopped. He looked at his client with the expression of an attorney realizing he'd been lied to from the beginning. "Maud, You didn't mention any of this when we discussed the case. I didn't think, her voice cracked. That was years ago. You thought it was buried. Aura's voice cut through the excuses like a scalpel. You thought Tyler was too broken to fight back, and you thought his father wouldn't look too closely at your past. The power dynamic had reversed completely. Travis had entered ready to attack, ready to threaten my reputation and business. Now he sat surrounded by evidence of his client's fraud, already mentally calculating exit strategies. Jordan added one more document to the pile. I've also spoken with Tyler Mitchell's accountant from that period. He confirms that Tyler had no knowledge of these withdrawals. The couple maintained separate records after 2017, and these accounts were managed solely by Ms. Perez. Maud's hands released the table edge, fell into her lap. She looked smaller somehow, like she was collapsing inward. I sat perfectly still at the head of the table, watching my trap close. Not with satisfaction, not yet. This was just the evidence. The real move came next. So, Travis cleared his throat, trying to salvage something. You've documented financial irregularities from 7 years ago. What exactly are you proposing? Aura smiled, professional, deadly. We'll discuss our proposal now. Travis attempted to rebuild his position, but his foundation had turned to sand. Look, mistakes were made years ago, but that doesn't negate Ms. Perez's legitimate community property claims to... Legitimate? Aura cut him off, her voice clinical. Let me explain what we have here, Mr. Jordan. Your client committed fraud on the community, a specific legal violation under Texas Family Code, Section 7.9. The court can reconstitute the estate by charging your client with the value of the diverted property, plus 7 years of statutory interest. She pulled out a calculator, though I suspected she'd already done the math. $45,000, compounded at Texas statutory rates over 7 years, equals approximately $70,000. That's what Ms. Perez owes Tyler Mitchell's estate before we even discuss criminal charges. Criminal charges! The words hung in the air like a threat and a promise. Travis leaned forward, trying to sound reasonable. Now wait. Criminal prosecution for marital financial disputes is extremely rare. No district attorney would... Jordan Reynolds spoke quietly, not looking up from his folder. I've already contacted the Harris County District Attorney's Office. They're very interested in cases involving systematic fraud exceeding $40,000, especially when accompanied by documentary evidence and witness testimony. That wasn't a bluff. I could see it in Jordan's stillness, in the way he handled his documents. He'd already made those calls, already laid that groundwork. Maud made a sound, half sob, half gasp. Her hand covered her mouth. Travis's jaw tightened. He was a competent attorney who'd walked into an ambush. His client had lied to him, and now he was watching his case, and possibly his reputation, disintegrate. What do you want? Aura produced another document from her briefcase. Single page, already prepared. Ms. Perez signs a comprehensive waiver of all claims to Tyler Mitchell's estate. She acknowledges the $70,000 she owes, but agrees we won't pursue collection if she waives all current and future claims. She also agrees never to contact Mr. Mitchell or his business again. She slid the document across the table. It stopped directly in front of Maud. And if she doesn't sign? Travis asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we file fraud charges with the DA's office within 24 hours. Aura's voice remained steady, factual. We also file a civil claim for reconstitution of the estate. That becomes public record. Local media loves stories about grieving widows who turn out to be con artists. Your client's name will be in every Houston newspaper by end of week. I finally spoke again, my voice as cold as a funeral chapel in winter. You came to my son's funeral after 7 years of silence. You performed grief you didn't feel. You threatened my business and my reputation, and all of it, every word, every tear, every threat, was built on money you stole from him while he was begging you not to leave. Maud's shoulders shook, silent crying. But I felt nothing. No pity, no satisfaction, just the cold certainty that justice had finally arrived. Travis reviewed the waiver document, his pen hovering over the signature line. He looked at his client. Maud, I need to speak with you, privately. No, I didn't raise my voice, didn't need to. You have 5 minutes to decide. Sign the waiver or we proceed with prosecution. There's no negotiation, no private consultation, no third option. That's coercive, Travis started. That's a choice. Ora gestured to the evidence spread across the table. Your client committed fraud. She has two options: walk away with nothing or face criminal charges and civil liability. She has 5 minutes to choose. I pulled out my phone, set it on the table, and started the timer. 5 minutes, 300 seconds. The display glowed in the silence. Travis tried one last angle. My client has rights. We need time to review. Your client has the right to remain silent. Jordan Reynolds spoke without emotion, just stating facts. She has the right to legal counsel, which she has. She does not have the right to escape consequences for fraud she committed 7 years ago. The conference room fell silent except for the quiet sound of Maud's broken breathing. Travis stared at the waiver, at the evidence, at his client, calculating odds that had already reached zero. Maud's hand moved toward the document, stopped, trembled above the paper like a bird uncertain of landing. Tyler loved you. I said it quietly, not as an accusation, just as fact. He would have forgiven anything, worked any job, lived in any apartment. He just wanted you to stay. And you took his money, betrayed his trust, and walked away because he wasn't successful enough for you. Her hand touched the paper, fingers shaking so badly she could barely hold the pen Travis handed her. 4 minutes, I said, watching the timer. The pen hovered over the signature line. Maud looked at Travis one last time, desperate for rescue that wasn't coming. He gave her the smallest nod, the kind that said, "Sign it." Ora slid another document across the table, bank statements showing Tyler's financial recovery after the divorce. Just so you know what you're walking away from, the business you claimed was worthless is now worth $2.8 million. Tyler rebuilt everything after you left. Every dollar of that growth happened after you abandoned him. You have no claim to any of it. The pen touched paper. Maud's signature emerged in shaking letters. Her hand moved through the motions like she was signing away more than legal claims, like she was acknowledging in ink exactly what she'd destroyed. Travis witnessed the signature, added his own below hers, professional to the end. Ora collected the document, made a copy on the conference room printer, handed the original to Travis. This meeting is concluded. Please vacate the premises. They stood. Maud's legs barely held her. Travis steadied her with one hand, gathered his documents with the other. They walked toward the door like survivors leaving a disaster site. At the threshold, Travis paused, looked back at me. You planned this, all of it. From the moment she walked into that funeral. I met his eyes, said nothing. Let him draw his own conclusions. They left. The door closed with a whisper. Ora, Jordan, and I sat in the conference room, surrounded by evidence of Maud's betrayal. The photographs still spread across the table, the bank statements, the witness testimonies, proof that justice, when properly prepared, was inevitable. It's done, Ora said. But it wasn't. Not quite. Justice had been served, but closure required one more step, one final act. I looked at Jordan. I need you for one more job. The 5 minutes expired. Maud sat frozen in her chair, the pen motionless in her trembling hand. The waiver document lay before her like an accusation she couldn't answer. Travis closed his briefcase with deliberate slowness, a gesture meant to communicate strategy rather than defeat. We need 24 hours to review our options with proper consultation. I could have refused, could have held firm to the ultimatum, but I had time, and desperate people made mistakes. 24 hours, same conditions apply. They left. Maud walked out without looking back, her shoulders hunched like she was carrying weight she couldn't set down. The waiver remained unsigned on the conference table. After they departed, Ora collected the documents, filed them in her briefcase with practiced efficiency. They'll try something, probably a negotiation call tomorrow. She was right. The call came the next morning. I was in my office reviewing preparations for an afternoon service when Ora phoned. Travis is on the line. He wants to talk settlement. Should I put him on speaker? Yes. His voice filled my office, carefully modulated between professional and conciliatory. Ora, let's be reasonable. My client is willing to significantly reduce her claims. $200,000. That's a fraction of what she could pursue in court. It saves everyone time, money, and publicity. Ora looked at me. I shook my head once. My client declines Travis. The offer on the table hasn't changed. Sign the waiver, walk away, or face prosecution. Silence on the line. Then, I'll be in touch. The second call came that afternoon. This time the conciliation had evaporated, replaced by something harder. I need you to understand something. Travis's voice had edges now. I've been contacted by former clients of Mitchell's funeral home. They have concerns about billing practices, unnecessary services. This could become a regulatory issue. Tell Sylvester it's in his interest to settle quietly. I listened without expression. Ora watched me, waiting for instructions. After Travis hung up, I returned to my office and pulled out 30 years of business records. Every contract, every invoice, every transaction logged with meticulous precision. I'd been audited by the State Funeral Board twice in 40 years. Both times passed without a single violation. My prices were competitive, my practices transparent. I'd built this business on trust during family's worst moments. Travis had nothing, but the threat itself revealed something useful. Desperation. I picked up my phone and called Jordan Reynolds. I need everything on Maud Perez from June 2018 to present. Employment records, tax returns, government assistance applications, anything involving money. If she's been living honestly, we'll know. If she hasn't, understood. 48 hours. I returned to the funeral home's daily rhythm. Conducted 2 services that week. Met with families who needed me, focused and present, not distracted by revenge. But underneath the professional composure, I was waiting. 2 days later, Jordan arrived at my office after business hours. He carried a folder that looked thicker than the last one. She filed for food assistance and housing subsidies in 2019 and 2020. He opened the folder, laid out government forms with Maud's signature, claimed annual income under $15,000. Same years, I found cash payments from 2 employers, a retail store and a catering company. Conservative estimate, $38,000 unreported income each year. Tax evasion, federal crime. I felt something cold and final settle in my chest. Jordan continued, methodical as always. Better yet, or worse, depending on perspective, she filed 3 separate complaints with family court, claiming Tyler stopped paying alimony. Court records show she requested enforcement actions. He produced bank statements, Tyler's neat handwriting on the memo lines. Alimony payment, Maud, every month, never missed. She lied to the court. I studied the documents spread across my desk. Each one another nail in a coffin Maud had built for herself. Tax evasion, social benefits fraud, false statements to a court, federal and state charges. How much time is she looking at? Ora had joined us for the debriefing. Her expression was serious, professional satisfaction replaced by something more somber. If prosecuted, tax evasion alone could be 3 to 5 years. Benefits fraud adds more. Making false statements to a court, that's contempt, possibly perjury. We're talking significant prison time. The weight of it hung in the office. I'd wanted to stop Maud from profiting off Tyler's death. Now I held evidence that could destroy her life completely. I sat in the leather chair that had supported me through 40 years of business decisions. The same chair where I'd helped families choose caskets, plan services, navigate grief. Now I was planning something different. Justice maybe, revenge possibly. The line between them had blurred somewhere during the past 2 weeks. Draft a new ultimatum. My voice came out steady, certain. She has 48 hours to sign the waiver and provide a written apology for making baseless claims against Tyler's estate. In exchange, we won't refer her fraud to federal authorities. If she refuses or tries to negotiate, every document goes to the IRS, Texas Health and Human Services, and the county district attorney. Ora nodded, making notes. I'll send it first thing tomorrow. Jordan collected his evidence, filed it carefully in his briefcase. Watch your back, Mr. Mitchell. Cornered animals do unpredictable things. After they left, I sat alone in my office. The building had gone quiet. Funeral homes after dark held a particular stillness, heavy with the weight of all the grief that had passed through their walls. I thought about Tyler, about the years he'd spent trying to recover from Maud's betrayal, about the automatic alimony payments he'd never missed despite barely affording his own rent. She'd taken his money, lied about it, tried to take more after his death. And I was about to end it. I looked at the documents on my desk, evidence of fraud spanning 7 years. This wasn't just about winning anymore. This was about ensuring Maud never tried this with anyone else's family. I picked up my phone to call Aura with additional instructions, then paused, set it down, thought. Sometimes justice required patience. Sometimes it required overwhelming force. I'd spent 2 weeks gathering evidence, building an unassailable case. Now, I just needed to wait for Maud to make her final mistake. The ultimatum went out the next morning. Aura sent it by email and certified mail. No room for claims she hadn't received it. 48 hours. Sign and apologize, or face federal prosecution. I expected negotiation, maybe another desperate call from Travis. Instead, I got something more direct. I was conducting a service when my receptionist interrupted, her voice tight with concern. "Mr. Mitchell, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a woman here. She says she needs to speak with you immediately. She's quite insistent." Maud, it had to be. I excused myself from the family I was assisting, promised to return in 5 minutes. Walked to my office to find her standing in the hallway, arms crossed, expression somewhere between desperate and defiant. "We need to talk." Her voice shook, but whether from fear or anger I couldn't tell yet. "My office." I held the door open, let her enter first, closed it behind us. She didn't sit, paced instead, moving from window to desk to bookshelf like she couldn't settle. I remained standing near the door, maintaining distance, my territory, my rules. "I got your ultimatum." She turned to face me, and I saw the calculation in her eyes, trying different approaches, searching for the angle that would work. "Sylvester, I know you must hate me. I understand why, but this has gone too far." I said nothing, waited. People revealed more in silence than in conversation. I made mistakes during my marriage to Tyler. I admit that. I was young and scared and handled things badly. The tears started, on cue, like a performance she'd rehearsed. But I loved him once. You have to believe that. And I know he would have wanted us to find a way through this that doesn't destroy everyone. Still, I remained silent. Watched her play through her script. "I'm not asking for millions anymore. I need help starting over. 50,000, that's all. It would let me move, find a new job, leave all this behind. Tyler would have wanted me to have a fresh start. The manipulation was textbook. Appeals to shared history. Reduction of demands to seem reasonable. Invoking Tyler's imagined wishes. I'd seen variations of this at 1,000 funerals. Family members trying to leverage grief into his inheritance. Guilt into money. "Are you finished?" My voice came out flat, professional. The tone I used with vendors who tried to overcharge, with family members making unreasonable demands. She flinched. "I'm trying to be reasonable." "You gave Tyler nothing when he needed you." I cut through her act like a scalpel through tissue. "You took his money, betrayed his trust, abandoned him during the worst crisis of his life. You filed false complaints claiming he didn't pay alimony when he never missed a payment. You defrauded the government for 7 years while working under the table. And now you come to his father's business, to the building where we buried him, and ask for money." Her face went pale. She hadn't expected me to know about the government fraud. Travis must not have told her about Jordan's latest findings. Mistakes were made with paperwork, but mistakes? I let the word hang between us. "You systematically lied to the IRS, Texas Health and Human Services, and Family Court. Those aren't mistakes. That's a pattern of fraud spanning 7 years. Federal charges, state charges, prison time." The tears stopped. Her expression shifted, desperation giving way to something uglier. "You're really going to do this? Destroy me over money I'm entitled to? You're entitled to nothing." My voice remained level, factual, not angry, just absolute. "Tyler owed you nothing after you left. His estate owes you nothing now. You will sign the waiver, provide a written apology for baseless claims, and walk away. Or I will personally deliver every document Jordan Reynolds found to federal prosecutors." She stared at me, searching for leverage she no longer had. "Travis said you wouldn't actually prosecute. He said it was just a threat." "Travis is wrong. I've already contacted the district attorney's office. They're very interested in reviewing the evidence once you refuse my offer." That was a slight exaggeration. Jordan had made preliminary contact, but no formal referral yet. But Maud didn't know that, and the lie served justice. Her hands clenched into fists. You're a bitter old man. Tyler told me you were controlling, that you never let him make his own decisions. Tyler never said that. I spoke with certainty. I know because I spent the last 7 years of his life helping him rebuild what you destroyed. Every conversation, every meal, every hospital visit. He never blamed me. He blamed himself for not being enough for you. Something broke in her expression. The manipulation gave way to pure rage. Fine. You want me to sign your paper? I'll sign it. But don't pretend this is about justice. This is revenge because your son was too weak to keep me. She stormed toward the door, yanked it open hard enough that it hit the wall. Picture frames rattled on my bookshelf. You'll get your waiver? I hope it makes you feel better about burying your failure of a son. The door slammed. The building absorbed the sound, then returned to its usual stillness. I walked to my desk, sat down in my chair, and looked at the phone. 48 hours. She'd sign. I knew it the way I knew which families would break down during services and which would maintain composure. Maud was out of options, out of allies, out of time. The receptionist knocked softly. "Mr. Mitchell, are you all right? Should I call security?" "I'm fine. Thank you for checking." She hesitated at the door. She seemed volatile. She's desperate. There's a difference. After she left, I sat alone in my office, surrounded by the evidence of 40 years building something that mattered. The funeral home hummed with quiet activity, staff preparing for tomorrow's services, families finding comfort in ritual and ceremony. Tyler's photo sat on my desk, the one from before Maud, before the business crisis, before everything fell apart. Young and hopeful, believing the world would be fair if he just worked hard enough. I'd failed to protect him from heartbreak, but I'd succeeded in protecting his memory from being exploited by the woman who'd broken him. The phone would ring within 48 hours. Maud would sign the waiver, write her apology, and disappear. And Tyler's estate, the business we'd built together, the life insurance policy he'd maintained even when money was tight, would remain intact. Justice delivered. Case closed. The satisfaction I felt was cold and complete, like the stillness after a burial when the last mourner had left, and only truth remained. 48 hours passed. I sat in my office, phone on the desk, waiting for a call that never came. The deadline expired at 2 p.m. on a Thursday. At hour 49, my phone buzzed. Not a call, but an email notification. Aura forwarded Travis's message. I leaned over her shoulder, reading the screen. My client intends to file a civil action, alleging intentional infliction of emotional distress and abuse of process. Your client's conduct constitutes harassment and... I stopped her before she finished reading. A thin smile crossed my face, the first genuine smile since Tyler's funeral, cold and victorious. She's filing a lawsuit, public court action. That changes everything, doesn't it? Aura understood immediately. She'd been waiting for this too. It means our obligation to confidentiality is gone. She made this public. We can respond publicly. File the complaints, all of them. My voice was steady, decisive. IRS, Health and Human Services, and our counterclaim, make sure it's detailed. Every dollar she stole from Tyler, every lie she told. Let the courts and the government agencies decide what justice looks like. Aura moved with practiced efficiency. Within 3 hours, she'd prepared 3 separate submissions. IRS Form 3949A for suspected tax fraud, Texas Health and Human Services complaint, form for benefits fraud, civil counterclaim, Tyler Mitchell's estate versus Maud Perez, demanding $70,000 plus legal fees. Each document was thorough, professionally formatted, backed by Jordan Reynolds' irrefutable evidence, bank statements showing unreported income, government assistance applications signed under penalty of perjury, court records of false claims about unpaid alimony matched against Tyler's canceled checks. Aura filed everything electronically and via certified mail, multiple paper trails, no room for claims of lost documents or miscommunication. I returned to work, conducted a funeral that afternoon, an elderly woman whose family filled 3 rows of the chapel, met with another family planning services for their father, reviewed invoices, paid staff, maintained the business that had been my life's work for 40 years. But there was a new edge to my focus now. I was waiting for the bureaucratic machinery to activate. It started slowly, then accelerated like gravity. 3 days later, Aura called with the first update. The IRS acknowledged receipt of our submission. They're opening a criminal investigation. That's significant. They don't do that for minor issues. I made a note in my small leather notebook, the same one where I'd planned Tyler's funeral service. IRS, criminal investigation, day 3. 2 days after that, another call. Texas HHS contacted me directly. They have questions about her 2019 and 2020 benefit applications. The investigator sounded very interested in our documentation. HHS investigation, day 5. The following day brought unexpected news. Her employer called. Corporate retail chain. They require background checks for all employees. They asked if the court documents were legitimate. I confirmed they were. And she was terminated this morning. For cause? I felt neither triumph nor sympathy. Just the cold satisfaction of watching consequences arrive on schedule. Maud had built this trap herself, over 7 years of fraud and deception. I was just the one who'd sprung it. The cascade continued. Federal agencies moved with their own timeline, grinding slowly but thoroughly. State investigators followed protocol, requesting documents, scheduling interviews. The legal system processed my counterclaim, assigning a case number, scheduling a hearing date. 1 week after the deadline expired, Travis Jordan sent his final communication. Aura read it aloud over the phone. I am withdrawing as counsel for Ms. Perez effective immediately due to irreconcilable differences and inability to effectively represent clients' interests. Please direct all future correspondence to her directly. Translation: he knew she was guilty and didn't want his name attached to what was coming. He's protecting himself, Aura observed. Can't blame him for that. He walked into this blind. I paused. Is she answering calls? Not mine. Not the government investigators either, from what I hear. She's gone silent. Maud was alone now. No attorney, no job, under federal and state investigation. Facing a $70,000 judgment she couldn't possibly pay. The woman who'd shown up at Tyler's funeral 3 weeks ago in expensive clothes and calculated grief had been systematically dismantled. I sat in my office that evening after the staff had left, surrounded by the quiet that funeral homes hold after dark. The building hummed with HVAC systems and the distant sound of Houston traffic. But inside these walls, stillness prevailed. Tyler's photograph sat on my desk, young, hopeful, before everything fell apart. I'd failed to protect him from heartbreak, failed to stop Maud from destroying him piece by piece. But I'd succeeded in one thing, ensuring she'd never profit from his death, ensuring her betrayal carried consequences. The phone on my desk stayed silent. Maud had 48 hours to sign the waiver. Instead, she'd tried to attack. Now she faced federal prosecution, state investigations, unemployment, and a civil judgment. Her attempt at a lawsuit had died the moment Travis withdrew. No attorney would take a case this toxic, this obviously doomed. My trap had closed completely. The machinery of justice, once activated, operated independently now. Even if I wanted to stop it, which I didn't, the IRS and Texas Health and Human Services followed their own procedures. Maud's fraud had caught the attention of institutions far more powerful than one funeral director seeking justice for his son. I picked up my notebook, reviewed the timeline I documented. 3 weeks from funeral to victory. Not a long time, really, but thorough, methodical, complete. The investigation would continue for months, maybe years, but the outcome was inevitable. Maud had committed crimes, and I'd provided investigators with gift-wrapped evidence. The rest was bureaucratic certainty. I closed the notebook and stood, stretching muscles that had grown stiff from sitting. Tomorrow, I had 2 funerals scheduled, families depending on me to guide them through their worst days with dignity and care. That was my real work. This business with Maud had been an interruption. Necessary, but an interruption nonetheless. I turned off the office lights, locked the building, and drove home through Houston's humid summer night. The air conditioning in my car hummed steadily, familiar and comforting. Traffic flowed around me, thousands of lives intersecting briefly at red lights and highway merges. Somewhere in this city, Maud was receiving letters from government agencies, realizing the walls were closing in. Somewhere, she was understanding that actions carried prices, that betrayal wasn't free. But I wasn't thinking about her anymore. I was thinking about Tyler, about the families I'd serve tomorrow, about the business that would continue long after this chapter closed. Justice had been served. Now came the waiting. 3 weeks after Travis withdrew, Maud finally surrendered. The email arrived early on a Monday morning, sent to Aura, not to me. Subject line, acceptance of terms. Body, 2 sentences. I will sign the waiver and settlement agreement. When can we schedule? No apologies, no excuses, just terse acknowledgement that she'd run out of options. Aura scheduled the signing for Wednesday afternoon at her firm's conference room, the same room where we'd presented the evidence, where Maud's confidence had crumbled under the weight of photographs and bank statements. Full circle. I arrived early. Aura had prepared the documents, waiver of all claims, admission of fraudulent conduct, repayment schedule for $70,000 over 5 years, non-disclosure agreement preventing her from discussing any aspect of the case publicly. Each page represented another chain, binding Maud to consequences. She arrived exactly on time, alone, no attorney, no support. She wore jeans and a plain shirt. The expensive armor had been sold, probably. Her face looked thinner, harder. The woman who'd performed grief at Tyler's funeral had been replaced by someone who understood defeat. We didn't speak. She sat across the table from me, Aura between us serving as referee and witness. Aura explained each document, pointing to signature lines, ensuring Maud understood what she was signing. This waiver relinquishes all claims to Tyler Mitchell's estate, current and future. Maud signed. This agreement acknowledges fraudulent withdrawal of $45,000 from joint accounts during your marriage, plus statutory interest, totaling $70,000. You agree to repay this sum over 60 months at approximately $1,167 monthly. Maud signed. This non-disclosure agreement prevents you from discussing this settlement, the investigation, or any related matters publicly. Violation results in immediate default and potential criminal referral to federal authorities. Maud signed. Each signature came mechanically, without hesitation. She'd been fighting for 3 weeks, trying to find an attorney who'd take her case, trying to negotiate, trying to escape. Now, she was just trying to survive. When the last document was signed, Aura collected everything into a folder. You'll receive copies by mail. First payment is due on the 1st of next month. Failure to pay triggers immediate legal action and notification to the IRS regarding our earlier submission. Maud stood without a word, walked to the door, paused with her hand on the handle, turned back. For a moment, I thought she might say something, offer an apology, make an excuse, throw one last accusation. Instead, she just looked at me. Really looked, maybe for the first time since she'd walked into Tyler's funeral. Whatever she saw in my face made her turn away without speaking. The door closed quietly behind her. No slam this time, no drama, just exit. Aura gathered her copies of the signed documents. It's done. Yes. How do you feel? I considered the question. How did I feel? Not triumphant, not satisfied exactly, just complete. Like a weight I'd been carrying had finally been set down. Tired, ready to go back to work. You were always working. You conducted 4 funerals while all this was happening. You know what I mean? Back to just the work, without this hanging over me. She nodded, understanding. For what it's worth, you did everything right. Legally, ethically, strategically. Tyler would be proud. I wasn't sure about that. Tyler had been soft-hearted, forgiving, the kind of person who'd have wanted mercy instead of justice. But Tyler wasn't here to make that choice. I'd made it for him. And I'd made it the only way I knew how. After leaving Aura's office, I drove to Oakwood Cemetery. The morning was warm, humid, typical Houston summer. Oak trees provided patches of shade across the manicured grounds. Birds sang in branches overhead. Cardinals, mockingbirds, the everyday music of Texas mornings. Tyler's grave sat beneath one of the older oaks, the headstone simple and clean. I'd chosen it myself, refusing the granite monuments Maud would have picked if she'd been there. Just his name, dates, and a single line, beloved son and friend. I stood there for a long time, not speaking, just being present. The first time I'd truly visited since the burial, the first time I could come as his father instead of his avenger. It's over, I finally said quietly. She won't get a penny, won't speak about you publicly. We'll spend the next 5 years paying back what she stole, and the federal investigation continues. That's out of my hands now, but the evidence is solid. The wind moved through oak leaves above me, rustling them in response that meant nothing and everything. I know you would have forgiven her. You always were too generous, too willing to see the best in people even when they showed you their worst. I knelt, brushed fallen leaves from the grave marker. But I'm not you, and someone had to make sure she didn't profit from breaking you. I placed fresh white lilies beside the headstone, Tyler's favorite flowers, though he'd never have admitted it to anyone but me. A small gesture. Inadequate, really. But what else could I offer except flowers and justice? Standing, I looked across the cemetery, at rows of markers stretching toward the fence line, at other visitors tending other graves, at the groundskeeper in the distance operating a riding mower, life and death existing side by side, the way they always did. The weight had lifted, but Tyler was still gone. Maud would pay monthly for 5 years, but that wouldn't bring back my son. Justice had been served, but the victory felt hollow. Not hollow enough to regret it, though. Just hollow enough to recognize that revenge and healing weren't the same thing. I'd achieved one. The other would take longer. Walking back to my car, I pulled out my phone. 7 missed calls, all from the funeral home. Business had continued while I'd been settling scores. Families needed me. Services required planning. Life demanded attention. I started the car, turned on the air conditioning against the Texas heat, and headed back to the funeral home. Back to the work that had sustained me for 40 years. Back to helping people navigate their worst days with dignity and care. My phone rang before I'd left the cemetery parking lot. Unfamiliar number. Mitchell and Sons. Funeral home, this is Sylvester Mitchell. A woman's voice strained and tired. Mr. Mitchell, my father passed away this morning. We need to arrange services. Can you help us? Yes, I said, pulling out my appointment book. I'm so sorry for your loss. Let's talk about what your family needs. And just like that, life continued. Another family, another service, another opportunity to do what I did best, guide people through grief with professionalism and care. Tyler's justice had been served. Maud's consequences would unfold over years. But the work, my real work, remained constant. I drove back to the funeral home, ready to serve the living by honoring the dead, ready to be exactly who I'd always been. Sylvester Mitchell, funeral director, father, survivor, ready to move forward. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.